Islam Makhachev has just submitted Renato Moicano in the main event of UFC 311, and as always there's a question of who can beat him. And since these videos always seem to get views, I've put together a tier list of fighters who may potentially fight Islam Makhachev, and we're going to rank them based on their chances. And we're going to start off with the opponent that Islam was supposed to fight originally, Arman Sarukian. Arman's going in the decent chance tier. I do believe Arman had the best chance to beat Makhachev out of all the fighters at 155 at the moment. I thought he'd go to a 49-46 type decision versus Makhachev before pulling out the day before, and he's fully capable of winning 1 or 2 rounds. However, I do think the striking edge goes to Islam, and the grappling edge also goes to Islam. I don't think the levels are that far apart in the striking or grappling. Arman is an incredible wrestler and a good striker himself, but we've seen him out scrambled by the likes of Mateusz Gamrot, and he can seem quite open on the feet sometimes. So while he does have the skill set to trouble Islam, I don't know if he'll beat him, and that's why he's in decent chance. And that takes us to our next opponent, Justin Gaethje. Islam and Gaethje could have fought last year if Gaethje beat Holloway, but now he's more or less at the back of the queue. But knowing how the lightweight division works, how Gaethje and Poirier always seem to get title shots for no reason, this fight could happen assuming Gaethje beats Dan Hooker and then gets another win afterwards against someone like Charles Olivera. The reason he's in the no tier is that even though he's got a puncher's chance, as everyone else in the division does, one thing that Justin Gaethje's never improved on is his jiu-jitsu. Gaethje has always been useless off his back, and I don't think Islam will have that much trouble getting a takedown on Gaethje. So it could play out basically the same as the Moicano fight, Islam by submission in round 1. And that takes us to the last man who beat Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway. The reason Holloway's above Gaethje isn't just because Holloway beat Gaethje. I do think Holloway has much better takedown defence than Gaethje. He's not explosive on the feet, but he's got excellent timing, he's got great accuracy, and most importantly, great cardio. So if we do see a situation where Islam struggles to get takedowns on Holloway, it could be a very interesting fight. But at the end of the day, Holloway is a striker, and I think Islam will get some takedowns, so that's why he's in low chance. And that takes us to our next opponent, the rematch with Charles Olivera. If you remember, these two were supposed to fight again back in 2023, but obviously Olivera pulled out and that became the Volkanovski rematch. I was a bit confused at the time as to why people thought Olivera had a really good chance in the rematch. Olivera had success in 0 parts of the fight. He was getting outstruck and outboxed by Islam, he was getting outgrappled by Islam, he got dropped by Islam and then submitted by Islam. I think the reason people gave him a good chance in the rematch is because people had higher expectations of him in the first fight. If you remember, 2022 was the peak of Charles Oliveira's fan base. He was a lot of people's favourite fighters at that time, and the fight with Islam going into it was seen as 50-50. So naturally it would be disappointing seeing him get shut down the way he did in the first fight. But I don't think it came down to just being a bad performance for Olivera. I think Islam is simply better and a bad matchup for Olivera, and that's why he's down there at low chance. And that takes us to the potential next fight for Makhachev, a super fight with Ilia Topuria. This fight's going to go in the close fight tier. This is easily the best or second best fight to make in MMA, number 1 versus number 3 pound for pound, and it'd be very interesting to see how it would play out. The way I see it is quite simple. Islam's clearly the better grappler, Topuria's clearly the better striker. I think people are kidding themselves if they say that Islam's on the same level as Uperia as a striker. The only reason it'd look competitive on the feet is because of the takedown threat. Otherwise I think Uperia would knock him out. And if it was Uperia taking on 135 pound Islam moving up to 145, I'd be very confident in Uperia. But since I think the better fighter is the smaller one, the size difference evens out. I think if Uperia could even stuff half of Islam's takedowns, he might win. But Uperia's not that big of a featherweight. The strength difference might be too much, and in that case Islam might have an easy time. I think Volkanovski has much better takedown defence than Uperia, but Uperia could shut off Islam with one punch. So it's a very interesting fight, and I'd love to see it. And that takes us to our next opponent, Michael Chandler. It might seem a bit weird to have him on the same tier as Charles Oliveira and Max Holloway, and above Justin Gaethje, but I do think Chandler has the best one-punch power out of anyone at lightweight, so there is quite a big puncher's chance. But otherwise he's got terrible fight IQ, Islam's the better grappler, Chandler's got bad cardio, a bad chin. Islam most likely beats him. And our next opponent is never going to fight Islam, but he's going to be on the video just for the views. Conor McGregor. Obviously McGregor's going to go in the no tier. He hasn't beaten a ranked opponent in 9 years. He's clearly not dedicated to fighting, and he may never even fight in the UFC again, let alone fight Islam. And that's why he's down there. And that takes us to our next opponent, Paddy Pimblett. I don't think anyone really thinks Paddy's going to fight Islam, but for the sake of content, Paddy Pimblett's on the list. He's worse than Islam in every single way. He would get put down quite easily. Which takes us to our next opponent, which is actually quite interesting. The welterweight champion, Balal Muhammad. Now, while I do think that Islam's a better striker than Balal, and a better grappler than Balal, I do have a few reasons to believe Balal might be a bad matchup stylistically for Islam. We still haven't seen any of these Dagestani fighters move up in weight, so a difference in strength might be a massive game changer for them. Belal's striking has gotten quite good over time, and I think Islam's striking defense is at its worst when he's on the front foot. And as we saw from Balal versus Vicente Luque in the rematch, he can strike off his back foot, so if Islam can't get a takedown on Balal, he may get outstruck at distance for 5 rounds. So it's a very intriguing fight. I think Islam's more skilled and the better fighter overall, but I would not be surprised if this was a big banana skin for Islam. And that takes us to our next opponent, Shavkat Rakhmonov. Shavkat is set to fight Balal next. I personally do think that Balal's going to beat Shavkat, but they both present issues for Islam in separate ways. Shavkat's more dangerous on the feet, he's got more submission threat, and he's got a massive height and reach advantage. But I think wrestling defensively he's not that good. While Shavkat may be ahead on the feet, Islam's at the level where he could take down Shavkat and maybe get a submission. If Ian Garry can almost get a rear naked choke on Shavkat, so can Islam. And that's why he's only in the middle. And that takes us to our final opponent on the list, Jack Della Maddalena. He's gone on the same tier as Shavkat and Arman. I see this fight similar to the way I see the Uperia fight. Maddalena could easily knock out Islam on the feet if given the right chance, but the takedown threat is such an important factor that I think outweighs the weight difference. If anything, Islam and Maddalena are the same size despite being in different weight classes. But Maddalena's takedown defense is good, it's been improving fight by fight, and while it may not be enough to consistently stuff Islam's takedowns, he could survive enough to have his moments on the feet, and that's where he's got a decent chance, because his boxing is extremely clean. And anyway, that's going to do it for the video. Like and subscribe, tell me if you disagree, if you agree, leave a comment anyway so I get more views. Goodbye.